So you've raised your sons or daughters in the ways of Jesus. You raised them in a Christian home with loving parents. They went to church, they went to youth group, they went to children's church. They seemed to comply with everything you were teaching them. Maybe you had them dedicated, maybe you had them baptized. And then they turn 18, graduate high school, leave the home, and everything seems to unwind, and everything that you seem to have taught them disappears. Enter the notorious stupid years between 18 and 25. How will you navigate around that season of your adult child's life? Find out 7 tips on how you can win your children back. Men in the Arena Army, I salute you guys. Thanks for listening to this episode of the Men in the Arena podcast. This is Equipping Men in 10. I'm Jim Ramos, your host and guide to your best version in the stress bubble of life and beyond. Welcome to today's show. Guys, today I want to give you 7 tips to loving your children through the stupid years of 18 to 25 years old. You know, there are a lot of doomsday people out there screaming, oh, we're losing kids. They're leaving the church. They're never coming back. And you know what? I go back to the Amish people and the year of Rumspringa when they allow their children at 18 to go sow their oats for a year. You know, they've been doing this for years and years and years and years. There's a reason why this is. It is very common for children to go wayward when they are left on their own. So I'm not saying it's something we hope for. I'm not saying it's something we pray for. It's something no parent wants to see. No parent wants to see their son or daughter doing stupid stuff contrary to biblical teaching and the things that you taught them in their home. However, we have to be prepared when that time comes. So if and when that time comes, how do you love your children back to the things that you taught them? How do you love your children well? How do you love your sons and daughters through the stupid years? So I have 7 things that I've learned personally, or I've seen these lived out personally. And I want to share these 7 tips. I think they'll really help you. The first thing is this. It is your job as father to be incarnational Jesus to your sons and daughters, regardless of their actions. You know, in Matthew chapter 17, verses 1 through 8, we see this transfiguration story, and we see God the Father, one of only 3 times in the New Testament, audibly speaking, says this about Jesus: "This is my son, in whom I love, in him I am well pleased, listen to him." So basically what happens here is the Father says this is my son. In other words, Jesus belongs to me. The second thing he says that's unconditional, it's not conditional based upon the actions of Jesus, is I love this son of mine. So as a parent, we need to look at our adult children, regardless of what they do, and say, you will always belong to me. You will always be loved by me. In Luke chapter 15, Jesus tells a story of the prodigal son. You know, we see the woman in the lost coin, that parable, where she searches the house for the lost coin. In Luke 15, we also see the parable of the lost sheep, where the shepherd searches for the lost sheep. However, when it comes to the lost son, a human perspective, the father does not search for the son. The father looks on the horizon every day, looking, hoping, praying for the son to come back. But when the son comes back, the father offers us a beautiful picture of how we can receive our children. The first thing he does is he puts a ring, the signet ring, on his hand, which is he gives his son, even though the son had squandered half his inheritance, the father gave his son power of attorney. The father put the cloak over his shoulders, which is a symbol of honor. And the third thing that happened that I thought was very, very significant, maybe the most significant in the story, is the father put sandals on his son's feet. You see, the son came shoeless to his father. I believe that was on purpose, because a shoeless person was a slave, was a servant. They had no rights. So the son coming to the father shoeless is acknowledging he's forfeited his sonship, he's forfeited his rights. He just wanted to be a slave and be treated with kindness because he knew his father was a man of integrity. But the father put sandals on his son's feet. The father says, no, you will never be a slave, because you belong to me. So the first thing that we can do is to be incarnational, hands, feet, and heart of Jesus. You know, in John chapter 1, verse 14, it says, "And the Word became flesh and dwelt among us. We've seen his glory as the glory of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth." And that is our job as parents, is to be the incarnational hands, feet, heart, arms, eyes, mouth of Jesus. The second thing that you can do is continue to pray for your sons and daughters. You know, I'm a little alarmed at how many men I talk to who do not pray for their kids, or they don't pray for the spouses of their kids. It is your role, Dad, to pray not only for your children, but for those men and women that your children will marry one day. And I would say this, pray for you. When your children enter this weird phase I call the stupid years, or if they do, your job is to make sure that your heart is pure, your heart is clean, your heart is open to them, just like the Father in Luke 15. So your job is to pray for your children and for your own heart. The third thing you can do is this. When you see your children, when you see that child that is wayward, let's say, smile, look them in the eye and smile, just like you would if they were the most popular person on the planet. You know, if you're a Christian man, your children know that you love them, but do you like them? When you smile, when you look them in the eyes, it says, listen, not only do I love you, but I like you. And when I learned that principle, it was a game changer for me, because my face often represented how that son was acting in the moment. And I don't want my facial expression to communicate anything other than I love you and you belong to me. It's an unconditional gift, regardless of what you do. The fourth thing is this: hug them when you see them. And especially you dads of daughters, as your daughters develop physically, you have a tendency, Dad, to pull away because you don't want to be or appear to be inappropriate. And I just say, you know what, that's garbage. Your daughters need you to embrace them, to love them, to kiss them on the forehead, to whatever. Because if you don't, guess what, buddy? Somebody else is going to, and you probably don't want to know what's going to happen next. So they need to find their love and affection from you. If you have a son or daughter that is struggling through the stupid years, your job is to embrace them, to love them, just as the Father embraced the Son in Luke chapter 15. The fourth thing that you can do, and this is really important, in my garage gym, I have these big rubber bands. They're workout bands. So they probably stretch maybe close to 10 feet in length. So if I took one of those bands and I put that over each of my kids, there is an imaginary workout rubber band over each of my sons. And I allow my sons, all in their 20s at this point, to go and be individuals and to do their thing. But I only let them go so far before I re-engage with them. And it's very easy for a parent, when you see your children doing stupid things, to just take that rubber band off and go, hey, I'm out. But you cannot do that, Dad. You've got to engage them emotionally. You have to gauge them spiritually. You have to engage them relationally. Put that rubber band over them and engage your children. The sixth thing is this, guys. You know, we live in a day and age where we have bulldozer dads knocking over all these obstacles. I've heard of snowplow moms bulldozing over every obstacle in the way. You've heard of the helicopter parent hovering over their children. We live in this day and age where one of the mistakes that good parents make is they're overprotective of their children, and they do not allow their children to experience adversity, suffering, persecution, reaping what they've sown. And so we as parents need to use wisdom in how we deal with our children when they initiate decisions that are going to harm them. So guys, I just pray James 1:5 over you, that God, and he promises in James 1:5 to give you wisdom. So I just pray that over you, that when your children struggle, that God gives you wisdom how to deal with each individual child, because every situation requires you to have wisdom. And in each of my child's decisions that I thought were dumb decisions, I had to ask God to give me wisdom. And I think most of the time I chose right, but not all the time. not every time. So I just pray wisdom over you, that you know to what degree, and I think for me, the degree with my kids always was, I do not want them to make decisions that will lead them into permanent damage or permanent bondage, because God has called us to be free. And so we as dads need to be the gatekeepers. We as dads need to lead our children to freedom and be engaged enough that when we see them leading into bondage, we can step in and through wisdom lead them and direct them, hopefully the way that they should go. And the seventh thing is this. The first thing was to be the incarnational hands and feet of Jesus. The seventh thing, Dad, is this: trust Jesus with your children. This is hard. It's hard when you pour your life into your children. It's hard when you think that you crushed it in the stress bubble and you release your kids on the other side of the stress bubble just to see them unwind for a season. But remember all of your prayers. Remember that you have trusted your kids. Here's a prayer I prayed over my kids. My wife and I prayed this prayer over our kids almost every night before they went to bed, that God would protect them from sin and sickness, disease, illness, and injury all the days of their lives. And it was really cool for me to hear my oldest son pray that exact same prayer. I think he added a couple things because he's raising a daughter. He over my granddaughter. So cool to hear that. Proverbs 22:6 says, train up your child in the way that they should go, and when they are old, they will not depart from it. And that verse literally means in the Hebrew, train your child in the way they should go according to their bent, according to their temperament. And this is not a promise, but it is a principle that our job is to train them up, because guys, listen, here's what I'll tell you. You are just a steward of your children for a season. You've got a short season of life to steward the children that God has given you, but ultimately they have to make their own decisions. They will reap what they have sown. You are not the one reaping what they have sown. That is their responsibility. They will be held accountable for that. Your job is to raise them up in the way that they should go, in the fear and admonition of the Lord, according to Joshua 24:15. As for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. So guys, I hope those 7 things helped you. If you enjoyed today's podcast, please copy this show link, and shoot it off through a text to one of your buddies. Get them listening to our podcast. That'd help us a lot, guys. Until next time, feel the wet sound of the arena floor. Hear the deafening roar of the crowd. Taste the sweetness of victory. Smell the stench of battle. Get in the game. Get dirty. Grind it out and be a man.